In another closely fought game between Kasparov and Tigran Petrosian is playing here right now. So Kasparov is playing with the white pieces and Petrosian with the black pieces here. It's the f5 is played here. It's the Dutch defense on the board here. And after g3, this is the classical variation of the Dutch defense on the board here. So bishop shifts to g2 here. And after that, pawn push to d5 attacks this pawn over here. So knight now comes to f3 and bishop goes to e7, and both the players now castles on the king side now. And b3 is now played here, completing the pawn structure for Kasparov, and a pawn push to c6 creates its Petrosian's own pawn structure, like a stone wall over here. Kasparov had got his own pawn structure, and the queen is can get active as well. So queen to c2 by Kasparov, and bishop now comes to d7. Bishop fianchet to b2, attacking the king pawn through an x-ray, and bishop drops to e8 now. Knight jumps to e5 into this crucial outpost over here. Knight to d7, countering the good knight of Kasparov. So the knight he didn't want to exchange of the knight, so he retreats the knight here, reorient the knight here, and bishop now comes in here to h5, attacking the e2 pawn. Knight now jumps to c3 here, and all of the pieces and the developments are finished, and opening is done, and the position is kind of equal as of now. So bishop to d6 is played by Petrosian, and pawn push to f3 is now played by Kasparov here, slightly opening these dark square diagonals above the queen, and a little bit weak here, so it's best to move the king away at any point. So bishop to g6 is played, creating an x-ray attack on the queen here. So no immediate threat. So e3 is played here, allowing an escape square for the queen here. Rook now comes to c8, and queen goes to e2 in the created space. Rook to e8, again x-ray attacking the queen here. So queen gets away to f2, and a6 is now played here, getting ready to push here b5. And the rook now comes to c1, countering the rook on c8, and queen to e7 is now played, and rook to e1. Kasparov now controls both these rooks with his own rooks, and now queen gets away to f8, and rook to d1 is now played here, repositioning the rook here. After the pawn exchange, the pawn is captured back, and this pawn here is undefended on c4. Pawn push to c5 by Petrosian, and bishop now retrieves to f1 here, and bishop to f7 is played here, trying to attack this pawn here, but Kasparov can simply defend it because of the bishop move earlier. Knight to a4 by Kasparov, and after this pawn exchange, pawn push to b5 attacks the knight and the pawn is exchanged, and the knight jumps here to c5 here, and pawn push to b4 by Petrosian here. So rook comes to c1, and queen gets to e7 now. Not just ignoring this extra attack by this rook here on e1, and bishop to h3 by Kasparov, keeping this bishop against the black rook of Petrosian. Queen to d8 is now played here, trying to bring the queen into the queen side. Knight captures the pawn here, and queen now gets here to a5, attacking the knight. Knight jumps here to c6 here, and this pawn is captured, attacking this bishop, which is supported by the pawn here, and this knight is also hanging over here. So knight captures the knight is played. This knight captured because this knight were connected, so it's safe here. And after that, the pawn push is played here to d5. And after this, queen captures the pawn here. Rook attacks the queen, and bishop comes to c5, attacking. And basically, this queen is gone here, but you can always capture the other queen back. So the queen exchange happens like this with a check, and bishop is captured back. This rook is captured, and basically Kasparov is basically down the exchange here, but not for long, because after this pawn is captured like this knight is attacked, and basically here knight jumps to b6 is played by Petrosian, protecting this pawn here, and allowing the capture of the rook like this, and knight captures the bishop back here. Bishop to a3 here is played here. It's not that much a loss in an open position. Bishops are equally valuable as rooks in most position, and these bishops are like very very active pieces with a lot of space on this board here. So exchanging the rooks for bishop is not bad, even though it's down point wise. So rook to b1, rook to e6, and knight jumps to b4, attacking the rook, and rook comes to a6, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to c5, attacking basically preventing this knight from an attack. and knight to d6 is played, and rook launches a check here. King to h7 and g4 is now played. Rook to a4 attacks the knight here, and king comes to e3, aiding its protection, not allowing any double attack to happen. Knight jumps to c4, attacking the king with a check here, and Kasparov pushes his king up the board now. So g5 is creating this check here, and king uh, just keeps in touch with his pawn here, protecting the pawns, and rook to a2 attacks the pawn here on h2. So rook to b7 by Kasparov here, winning this bishop here. So king to g6 is played here, and even in this position, Kasparov is slightly better. And uh, knight to f5 is now played here. So rook to a6, and in this position, basically, Kasparov is better here because the best one was to bring the knight here and attack this weak pawn over here. Would be very difficult. You have to keep the knight here to protect this pawn here. So pawn push to h4 by Kasparov, and after the pawn exchange, knight captures back with a check. King goes to g7 because this bishop is will be undefended. Knight again checks the king. King to g6, and bishop d4 is played here. And of this position, Petrosian resigned the game because this rook, if this bishop moves from here, this rook is creating checkmate threat here. If the rook here, and it's game over. So basically, rook to f6 is played here, and knight checks first. King comes here to g5. The rook goes to a7, and this is just an engine combination I'm showing. After this exchange, this pawn push to check. The king cannot capture this pawn, otherwise this bishop will be gone. And king to e6. King comes up the board. Kasparov. Knight to b2, and rook a6 plays the check here. And as of this position, I think basically I'll just end the analysis here because this is simply winning for Kasparov because he can just snap this pawn here. It's a rook and a knight against two minor pieces, and this pawn basically is hanging. You can push the pawn, bring the king here, and capture the pawn here, and then later on go after the pawn, or vice versa here. So, and because these pawns are connected, Kasparov will queen, and one of the pawn will queen, and Kasparov will win the match. So that's the game. I think the game ended, and as of this position, I'm just showing you the how the game will unfold if they played like 5 or 6 more. Yeah. So thanks for watching. We'll be back with more such videos.